My fellow citizens, hear me now. Our enemies gather beyond the gates. What is the plan? We must strike first, and strike hard!
Yes, we are with you!
Status report. Enemy fleet inbound. Scans active, they're on approach. Lock collimators, prepare interdiction. Firing solution locked, target acquired. Fire, eliminate them.
You know what makes this episode dangerous? Not Yamato's weapons, not the Republic, not even Palpatine. It's choice. Because the moment ordinary people and even Jedi realize there's another path, one not built on fear, manipulation, or endless war, the whole galaxy starts shaking at its foundation. What you're about to witness isn't just a battle for territory, it's a war over what the galaxy believes is possible. Let's get into it.
6 months after Space Battleship Yamato prevented galactic war between the Republic and itself, the galaxy discovered something far worse than war. The truth. The Galactic Republic, democracy spanning 1,000 generations, was a lie. The Separatist Alliance, freedom fighters against tyranny, was theater. The Clone Wars that had consumed billions of lives, devastated thousands of worlds, and militarized an entire civilization was orchestrated by one man wearing 2 masks. Chancellor Palpatine was Darth Sidious. The Jedi's ancient enemy had been ruling the Republic for 13 years, engineering a war where he controlled both armies, manipulating every battle, every treaty, every death toward a single objective: the complete annihilation of the Jedi Order and the birth of a Sith Empire. And Captain Susumu Kodai, standing in Yamato's intelligence center reviewing holographic evidence that proved every conspiracy theory they'd suspected, faced the most impossible decision of his career: expose the truth and trigger immediate galactic civil war, or stay silent and watch the Jedi Purge occur exactly as Palpatine planned. But there was a third option, the one Yamato always chose: fight, even if it meant sacrificing everything they had left: their damaged ship, their dwindling resources, and their only possible way home. To stop a Sith Lord who'd been orchestrating galactic politics since before most of Yamato's crew were born. The Clone Wars had been Palpatine's masterpiece. Yamato was about to become his worst nightmare. The evidence appeared on every holographic display in Yamato's intelligence center like an indictment written in light. Encrypted Sith communications dating back 13 years, financial transactions linking Palpatine to Separatist leadership, and, most damning, direct orders from Chancellor Palpatine to Count Dooku coordinating both Republic and Separatist military operations. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood frozen, watching his worst suspicions confirmed with evidence so comprehensive that denial was impossible. Beside him, Senator Bail Organa's face had gone pale, his political instincts recognizing that what they were seeing would shatter the Republic regardless of how they chose to reveal it. And at the center of it all, Captain Kodai and his intelligence officer commander Shima watched the Jedi master process information that redefined everything he'd fought for during 2 years of brutal warfare. "This can't be real," Obi-Wan said quietly, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Chancellor, I've known him for years. Advised him, trusted him. He's been guiding the Republic through this war with..." He stopped, hearing his own words, seeing the pattern. With perfect knowledge of both sides' strategies, Shima finished, her voice carrying neither judgment nor sympathy, just tactical assessment, because he was giving orders to both sides. Every battle where Republic forces were ambushed, he told the Separatists where you'd be. Every Separatist facility you raided successfully, he made sure defenses were minimal. The Clone Wars aren't a conflict between 2 factions. It's one man playing both sides against each other toward an endgame we're only beginning to understand. Kodai touched a control, and new data materialized. Biological programming protocols buried deep in clone trooper neural architecture. Activation phrases, behavioral modification triggers, and one specific command sequence labeled simply, Order 66. "What is Order 66? Bail asked, though dread was already settling into his gut. Obi-Wan read the protocol specifications with mounting horror. Emergency Contingency Order. Upon activation, all clone troopers will immediately execute their Jedi commanders as traitors to the Republic. His voice became hollow. Every Jedi, leading clone battalions. Every general on the front lines. Every knight serving as advisor or diplomat. Thousands of Jedi across the entire galaxy killed simultaneously by the soldiers they've been fighting beside for 2 years. And when does he plan to activate it? Bail asked. Kodai pulled up another data stream. Recent communications intercepts from Sith intelligence networks that Yamato had been monitoring for weeks. Originally, our analysis suggests it was scheduled for approximately 6 months from now, time to coincide with some final military objective that would justify emergency measures. But he highlighted recent transmissions with growing urgency. Palpatine knows we're investigating him. His agents have detected our surveillance. He's accelerating the timeline. Accelerated? Obi-Wan demanded. Hours, Shima replied grimly. Maybe days at most. He's preparing to trigger Order 66 immediately before we can expose him publicly. He'll kill the Jedi, declare himself Emperor, and consolidate power before opposition can organize. The intelligence center fell silent except for the hum of holographic displays showing evidence of systematic betrayal spanning more than a decade. Bail Organa, who'd spent his entire political career believing in democratic institutions and the rule of law, spoke with the voice of someone watching their world collapse. If we expose this publicly, if we broadcast proof that the Chancellor is a Sith Lord orchestrating both sides of a war, the Republic will fracture instantly. Some sectors will support him anyway. Others will rebel. We'll trigger the very civil war Palpatine engineered, just on a different timeline. And if we stay silent, Kodai asked, though he already knew the answer. Then the Jedi die. Obi-Wan replied. 10,000 peacekeepers murdered by the clone soldiers they've been leading. And Palpatine transforms the Republic into whatever empire he's been building toward all along. So we're choosing between immediate chaos or waiting for genocide, Shima summarized with brutal clarity. There's a third option, Kodai said, the same calm certainty in his voice that had guided Yamato through impossible battles in their home universe. We expose him and we protect the Jedi. Broadcast the evidence on every frequency. Warn every Jedi commander about Order 66. Give them 30 seconds warning before their clones receive activation codes. It won't save everyone, but it gives them a fighting chance. 30 seconds won't be enough, Obi-Wan protested. The clones are trained, disciplined, and already positioned with direct line of sight to their commanders. Even with warning, casualties will be catastrophic. Then we make sure those 30 seconds count, Kodai replied. And we use the one advantage Palpatine hasn't accounted for. He thinks we're isolated, damaged, and focused purely on defending Accord worlds. He doesn't know we've been preparing for this exact scenario since we discovered his manipulation. He pulled up tactical displays showing Accord territories, Jedi deployment patterns, and clone battalion positions across the galaxy. We've been quietly coordinating with clone deserters for months. CT 4477 Tracker has built a resistance network inside the clone army. Soldiers who've questioned their programming, who've been exposed to Accord philosophy about choice and freedom. Not many, maybe 2,000 out of 3 million, but positioned in key battalions across the galaxy. 2,000 against 3 million, Bail said. That's not an army. That's a symbolic gesture. It's 2,000 who will hesitate when Order 66 comes through, Kodai countered. 2,000 who will question orders instead of immediately firing. 2,000 opportunities for Jedi commanders to realize something's wrong and react before it's too late. Obi-Wan studied the tactical display, his strategic mind running probability calculations that all came back grim but not hopeless. It might work, might save 20, maybe 30% of deployed Jedi instead of near total casualties. But he met Kodai's eyes. The moment we broadcast that evidence, Palpatine will know we're his primary threat. He'll throw everything at the Accord. Not just military forces, his full Sith power. Count Dooku, General Grievous. Every asset he's been holding in reserve. You'll be fighting for survival while trying to coordinate a galaxy-wide rescue operation. That's what Yamato does, Kodai replied simply. We've been fighting for survival since the day we launched against Gamulus. This is just another impossible battle. The question isn't whether we can win, it's whether we choose to fight. Before anyone could respond, alarms screamed across the bridge as Yamato's long-range sensors detected massive hyperspace signatures emerging at the edge of the Karadef system. Commander Shima's hands flew across her tactical console, face draining of color as the sensor returns resolved. Captain, we have incoming. 150-plus capital ships, Separatist fleet composition, Providence-class dreadnoughts, Recusant-class destroyers, Munificent-class frigates. Flagship identified as General Grievous command vessel. Battle stations, Kodai ordered, moving to his command chair with practiced calm even as his mind calculated impossible odds. All Accord vessels, defensive formation around Karadef orbital facilities. Civilian evacuation protocols, get every non-combatant to designated shelters. Captain, Chief Engineer Tokugawa's voice crackled over the comm, carrying urgency that made everyone on the bridge tense. We have a critical problem. Wave motion engine is showing dimensional resonance cascade. The engine's been degrading since we arrived in this universe. Dimensional incompatibility with local space-time. I've been compensating, but he paused, and Kodai heard genuine fear in his engineer's voice for the first time in their years serving together. We have maybe 3 shots left before catastrophic failure. After that, the engine either explodes or goes completely offline. Either way, we'll never fire the wave motion gun again. And without the dimensional drive, we can't escape this universe. We'll be trapped here permanently. The bridge fell silent as that information settled over the crew like a death sentence. They'd come to this galaxy by accident, had hoped, planned, to eventually find a way back to Earth, back to the people they'd saved from extinction, back to families and homes left behind when the dimensional fracture pulled them across realities. 3 shots. That's all they had left before that hope died forever. How long to repair? Kodai asked, though he suspected the answer. Weeks, maybe months. The dimensional matrix requires materials that don't exist in this universe's periodic table. I'd have to fabricate synthetic alternatives, test them under dimensional stress, pray nothing explodes during the process. Tokugawa's frustration was palpable. We're not just maintaining an engine, Captain. We're keeping technology functional in a universe whose physical laws reject it. Every day, it degrades a little more. Every shot accelerates the breakdown. Kodai absorbed that information with the calm that had kept his crew alive through battles that should have killed them all. 3 shots against a separatist fleet with 150 capital ships. Against General Grievous, who'd killed dozens of Jedi Knights through tactical brutality and calculated cowardice. Against a galaxy-wide conspiracy that was about to trigger the greatest genocide in galactic history. Understood, Kodai replied. Tactical, plot firing solutions. Engineering, prepare wave motion gun for 70% charge. We make every shot count. On the main view screen, General Grievous flagship, the massive Providence-class destroyer Invisible Hand, dominated visual range, its hull bristling with turbo-laser batteries and hundreds of droid starfighters already launching toward Karadef's defensive perimeter. A transmission crackled across all frequencies, Grievous' mechanical voice carrying the cold satisfaction of someone who believed victory was inevitable. Captain Kodai of the vessel called Yamato. Chancellor Palpatine sends his regards and his regrets. Regrets that your interference in galactic affairs must end today. Surrender your ship and your crew will be processed as prisoners of war. Resist, and we will demonstrate why the Separatist Alliance has conquered 300 systems. Response. Shima asked. Kodai stood, moving to stand before the view screen where Grievous could see him clearly. General Grievous, tell Chancellor Palpatine, tell Darth Sidious, that his secrets are already compromised. The galaxy will know the truth about who orchestrated the Clone Wars. The Jedi will know about Order 66. And every clone trooper who questions their programming will know they have a choice beyond following orders programmed by a Sith Lord who views them as disposable weapons. On the Invisible Hands bridge, Grievous metallic hands clenched around his command console hard enough to crack the durasteel. "You know nothing about." "We know everything," Kodai interrupted. "And in approximately 30 seconds, so will everyone else. Calm. Transmit the compiled evidence. All frequencies. Every HoloNet node. Republic channels, separatist networks, independent media, pirate broadcasts. I want this information saturated across the entire galaxy. No encryption. Public access. Let everyone see what their war has really been." Transmitting now, his communications officer confirmed, hands moving with practiced efficiency across her console. Evidence packages deploying across, signal confirmed. Broadcasting on 47,000 separate frequencies. Estimate 93% galactic coverage within 4 minutes. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, in Republic briefing rooms and separatist command centers, on civilian news networks and military encrypted channels, the evidence began displaying. Holos of Palpatine, face obscured by Sith robes, giving orders to Count Dooku. Financial records proving Republic and Separatist funding came from identical sources. Battle plans showing coordinated deception on both sides. And most damning, the complete biological specifications for Order 66, including the exact activation phrase buried in every clone trooper's neural programming. In the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Mace Windu watched the transmission with expression shifting from disbelief to rage to grim acceptance. Contact every Jedi commander in the field. Emergency Protocol Nightfall. All Jedi are to consider their clone battalions potentially compromised. Disengage from joint operations immediately on battlefields across the galaxy. Cato Nemoidia, Maijito, Felucia, Selakami, Utapau. Jedi generals received the warning with seconds to spare as their clone commanders received a transmission from Coruscant, from Chancellor Palpatine's office, containing 3 words. Execute Order 66. What happened next would be studied for generations, as the moment the Republic died and something darker was born from its corpse. On most worlds, the warning came too late. Clone troopers turned with mechanical precision, raised their blasters, and fired on Jedi who'd led them for 2 years. Masters who'd saved their lives, fought beside them, treated them as brothers rather than equipment. All of it meaningless against biological programming that overwrote choice with compulsion. But on some worlds, on battlefields where Accord intelligence had managed to place their warnings seconds earlier, where clone commanders had been exposed to deserter networks and questioned their purpose, where Jedi had been faster or luckier or more paranoid, resistance emerged. On Utapau, Obi-Wan Kenobi felt the shift in the Force milliseconds before his clone commander raised his weapon, dropping from his Varictyl mount as blaster fire scorched the air where he'd been. On Kashyyyk, Yoda sensed the attack through battle meditation and vanished into the trees before clone troopers could fire. On Felucia, Aayla Secura's desperate force push scattered her battalion long enough for her to escape into jungle cover. But for every survivor, 5 Jedi died. For every warning heeded, 10 came too late. The transmission had saved lives, hundreds where there should have been none, but it hadn't prevented the genocide Palpatine had engineered. The Jedi Order, which had protected the galaxy for 25,000 years, was dying in the time it took to pull a trigger. And on Karadaf, as Yamato faced the Separatist fleet sent to eliminate them before more truth could spread, Captain Kodai made a decision that would define everything that followed. Wave motion gun to 70% charge, he ordered quietly. Target, General Grievous flagship. Engineering, I know every shot brings us closer to being stranded here forever. But if we don't stop this fleet, there won't be a future worth staying for. Fire when ready. The Yamato's bow section irised open, revealing the wave motion gun that had saved Earth, crossed dimensions, and protected thousands. Energy gathered with familiar buildup. Tachyon particles compressed beyond physical limitations. Dimensional forces channeled through technology that shouldn't exist in this universe. Power building until space itself rippled with distortion. Grievous watched his sensors detect the impossible energy buildup with calculation rather than fear. He'd reviewed every battle recording of Yamato, studied their tactics, identified their patterns. The wave motion gun was devastating but required time to charge, left the ship vulnerable, and, according to intelligence reports his agents had acquired, was degrading with each use. All ships, evasive pattern Omega-7, Grievous commanded. When they fire, scatter formation. They can destroy one vessel, perhaps 5 if we're positioned poorly. But they cannot eliminate my entire fleet with a single shot. And once that weapon discharges, once they're vulnerable during the recharge cycle, we overwhelm them with concentrated fire from all vectors. It was sound tactical analysis, perfect military doctrine, the kind of strategy that had won Grievous hundreds of battles against opponents who fought by conventional rules. But Kodai
They're
hadn't
everywhere.
survived
Shields up.
impossible
Got it.
wars
Firing
by being
back.
predictable.
Watch your flank.
Fire,
Capital
Yoda.
ship ahead.
The wave
Evasive
motion
maneuvers.
gun
Hold on.
discharged at 70%
Direct hit. Keep
power.
firing.
A controlled burst, precisely targeted, released with timing calculated down to microseconds. The beam tore through vacuum at relativistic speeds, struck invisible hand dead center, and kept going. Not at full power, not the uncontrolled devastation of maximum discharge, but a sustained, narrow-focus beam that carved through Grievous flagship like a plasma cutter through hull plating, continued through the 3 Providence-class dreadnoughts positioned behind it, struck 2 Recusant-class destroyers attempting evasive maneuvers too slowly, and dissipated only after reducing 43 ships to expanding debris clouds. Total casualties: approximately 180,000 droid crew for 1,000 organic officers and General Grievous, whose cybernetic body was recovered later from wreckage, damaged but reparable, which meant the war had not lost one of its primary architects, just temporarily sidelined him. Total time elapsed, 3.7 seconds. The Separatist fleet, which had approached with confidence based on numerical superiority, suddenly found itself reduced by over 30% before the first droid fighter even reached accord defensive positions. And aboard Yamato, Chief Engineer Tokugawa watched his displays with grim certainty. Wave motion engine dimensional matrix collapse at 68%. 2 shots remaining before catastrophic failure. Captain, I strongly recommend we preserve remaining capacity for. The rest of his sentence was drowned out by proximity alarms as the Separatist fleet, reduced but still overwhelming, opened fire with everything they had. Yamato's shields flared brilliant blue as turbolaser batteries and plasma torpedoes converged from 97 remaining capital ships, each one designed to destroy vessels far larger than Kodai's damaged battleship. Shields at 71% and dropping, Shima reported with controlled urgency. Hull integrity maintained, but we cannot sustain this concentration for more than 90 seconds. Then we don't sustain it for 90 seconds, Kodai replied. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 4. Use conventional engines. I want the wave motion engine completely offline until we need it. Tactical, coordinate with the core defense fleet. Hit and run tactics. Don't let them concentrate fire. But even as Yamato maneuvered through the maelstrom of fire with precision that would have been impossible for any Republic or Separatist vessel, even as Accord frigates and corvettes harried the flanks of dreadnoughts 100 times their mass, everyone on the bridge understood the mathematics. 97 ships against 16. Hundreds of thousands of droids against thousands of organic crew. A fleet built for galactic conquest against a coalition formed to protect refugees. They were going to lose. And then, against all probability, against every tactical prediction, against the despair settling over defenders who'd fought too long with too little, the Republic arrived. Not the entire Republic Navy, not Chancellor Palpatine's forces, but something that would prove far more dangerous to the Sith Lord's plans. 300 clone trooper battalions who'd heard Yamato's transmission, who'd seen evidence that their entire existence was engineered by a Sith Lord, who'd received Order 66 and made a choice that biology said should have been impossible. They'd said no. And Admiral Wolf Yullerin, commanding a fleet of 17 Republic Star destroyers, transmitted on all frequencies with voice carrying resolve that suggested he'd made a decision that would define the rest of his life. Separatist Fleet, this is Admiral Yularen of the Republic Navy. You are engaging forces under Republic protection. Withdraw immediately or face combined defensive action. On Yamato's bridge, Kodai allowed himself one breath of relief before the next crisis emerged. Because across the galaxy, in 1,000 locations simultaneously, Order 66 was tearing the Republic apart. And in the Chancellor's office on Coruscant, Darth Sidious was preparing to demonstrate why Sith Lords were more dangerous than any fleet. The
Hostiles
Jedi
closing in!
Purge
Evasive
began
maneuvers!
At 1847 Coruscant
Roll out!
Standard
Shake the
Time
missiles!
across 1,000 battlefields
Systems failing! Must hold on!
And for the
Can't
first
go
17
down now!
seconds, it unfolded exactly as Palpatine had engineered. On Cato Neimoidia, Jedi Master PLO Kun was flying reconnaissance when his clone pilots received the transmission. 3 words: execute Order 66. His starfighter exploded in midair, shot down by the men he commanded for 2 years, their programming overriding every bond of loyalty and shared combat. On Maijido, Kiadamundi led his battalion through urban combat when blaster fire erupted from behind. He deflected 7 shots with his lightsaber before the 8th caught him in the back. His last thought was confusion, not anger, just incomprehension that his clones would betray him. On Felucia, Aayla Secura sensed the shift and forced a heartbeat too late. She spun, lightsaber igniting, and managed to force push her immediate attackers backward before concentrated fire from 3 directions cut her down. 17 seconds of systematic genocide. And then Yamato's warning reached the Jedi, who were still alive to receive it. On Utapau, Obi-Wan Kenobi was meeting with local resistance leaders when his comlink crackled with Commander Cody's voice. General Kenobi, I have a pause, brief but telling. I have received orders to execute you for treason against the Republic. Obi-Wan's hand moved to his lightsaber, but Cody continued before he could ignite it. I've also received a transmission from Captain Kodai, evidence that Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious. That Order 66 is Sith manipulation. That we're another pause, and this time Obi-Wan heard something he'd never heard in a clone's voice before. Uncertainty. That we're programmed slaves executing our masters. Commander? Obi-Wan asked carefully. I'm trying to say no, sir, Cody replied, and his voice shook with the effort of biological programming warring against emergent consciousness. The order's in my head, telling me to kill you. But I don't want to. I choose not to. Is that? He struggled with the concept. Is that possible? Can I choose? Yes. Obi-Wan said quietly, feeling something profound shifting in the Force. Yes, Cody, you can choose. The programming isn't you. The choice is. Across Utapau's surface, 212th Battalion clone troopers stood with weapons raised toward their Jedi general, biological compulsion demanding they fire, and something newer, something fragile but real, insisting they had the right to refuse. 73% fired anyway. The programming was too strong, the conditioning too deep, but 27% lowered their weapons. 27% chose. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the greatest Jedi Masters in the Order, escaped Utapau not because of his lightsaber skills or Force powers, but because clone troopers he'd fought beside for 2 years decided orders weren't stronger than conscience. On Kashyyyk, Grandmaster Yoda meditated in the command center when he felt 10,000 Force signatures extinguish across the galaxy in the space between heartbeats. His ancient eyes opened with terrible understanding. Betrayed we have been, by the Republic we served, by the Chancellor we trusted. Clone Commander Gree approached from behind, blaster raised, Order 66 compelling him to execute the diminutive Jedi Master who'd led them through impossible battles. But Gree had been stationed on Karadef for 3 weeks during diplomatic missions, had seen clone deserters living freely, had spoken with CT 4477 Tracker about choice and purpose and whether their existence had to be defined by Kaminoan programming. Master Yoda, Gree said, his weapon shaking as programming and choice waged war inside his skull. I'm receiving orders to kill you. But I can't, won't, even if it means they decommission me, execute me. I choose not to follow this order. Yoda turned, studying the clone commander with force-enhanced perception that saw past biology to the genuine person struggling for autonomy. Save you, that choice may. Save many it might. Rally your brothers who question their orders. Protect Jedi who yet survive. Begun, the resistance has. Led by those who choose freedom over programming. The Wookiee forces, led by Chewbacca and Tarful, had heard Yamato's transmission and immediately understood. Their Jedi allies were under attack from within. They moved with coordinated efficiency, providing cover for Yoda's escape, engaging clone troopers who'd fired on their general, and establishing a perimeter that allowed questioning clones to stand down without being shot by their more thoroughly programmed brothers. Yoda vanished in Akashiic's forests, carried by Wookiees who'd lost friends to this war, but refused to lose their Jedi protectors to Sith manipulation. But for every Commander Cody or Gree who resisted programming, 5 clone commanders executed their orders with mechanical precision. For every battalion where Yamato's philosophical influence had taken root, 10 remained fully conditioned. On Sayla Kami, Stas Ali died when her speeder bike was shot down. On Mygeeto, Ki-Adi-Mundi's body was left in the snow. On Cato Nymoidia, PLO Kuhn's wreckage smoldered. The Jedi Order, 10,000 strong before Order 66, was reduced to fewer than 100 survivors in the first 3 minutes. But those survivors mattered, because in Palpatine's original design, the Jedi would have been completely annihilated with zero warning. Total extermination, perfect genocide. Yamato's intervention had saved 94 Jedi Masters, Knights, and Padawans who should have died. 94 who now knew the truth about Palpatine. 94 who could fight back. And on Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple itself, Anakin Skywalker stood at the head of the 501st Legion, lightsaber ignited, facing the temple's entrance as Master Windu's voice crackled over his comlink with desperate urgency. Anakin, fall back. Order 66 has been activated. The clones are. I know. Anakin interrupted, his voice carrying weight that made every clone trooper in the 501st shift uncomfortably. I received Kodai's transmission. I know Palpatine is Sidious. I know about Order 66. And he stopped, feeling the weight of choice pressing down on him like atmospheric pressure. In Palpatine's original design, Anakin would have led the assault on the Jedi Temple, would have killed younglings, murdered masters, and burned the last sanctuary of the Jedi Order to ashes in service to a Sith Lord who'd manipulated every step of his fall to the dark side. But Yamato's evidence had reached him 30 seconds before Palpatine's call. 30 seconds where he'd seen holographic proof that the Chancellor he'd trusted was the Sith Lord the Jedi had hunted for years. That every confidence, every private conversation, every moment of paternal guidance had been manipulation toward this exact moment. And in those 30 seconds, with Padme's voice in his ear begging him to see the truth, with Obi-Wan's warnings echoing in his memory, with the evidence undeniable before his eyes, Anakin Skywalker made a different choice. 501st, he commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority that cut through biological programming through sheer force of personality. Stand down. Lower your weapons. We're not attacking the temple. We're defending it. Sir, Captain Rex said carefully, a clone who'd fought beside Anakin through countless battles and developed enough personality to question rather than blindly obey. We're receiving orders directly from the Chancellor to execute Operation Nightfall, to eliminate all Jedi for treason against the Republic. The Chancellor is a Sith Lord, Anakin replied, turning to face his battalion so they could see his face, see the determination and fury and choice written there. He orchestrated this entire war, manipulated both sides, programmed you to kill the Jedi the moment it served his purposes. And he deactivated his lightsaber, making himself vulnerable before 300 armed clones. I'm choosing to stand with the Jedi against the Sith. Who's with me? For a moment, the 501st stood frozen between competing imperatives. Biological programming demanding they execute Order 66, and personal loyalty to a general who'd led them through hell and back. Then Rex lowered his blaster. "I'm with you, sir. Always have been." One by one, 73% of the 501st lowered their weapons. 27% raised them, programming too strong, too deep, too absolute. The 501st fractured, brother against brother. Some firing on Anakin, some defending him. Chaos erupting in the Temple Plaza as the most decorated battalion in the Republic's clone army went to civil war with itself over whether orders or choice mattered more. Inside the temple, Mace Windu received reports from the few Jedi who'd survived the initial massacre. Masters Yoda and Kenobi confirmed alive and evading pursuit. Masters Plo Koon, Mundi, Ayla Secura, Stas Ali confirmed killed. Temple Guard engaging clone forces outside. Anakin Skywalker has, the reporting Jedi paused, disbelief clear. Anakin has split his battalion. Some are defending the temple. Anakin chose the Jedi, Windu said, and for the first time since Order 66 began, something like hope entered his voice. Palpatine's plan is failing. Not completely. Not without devastating casualties. But failing. "What do we do now?" a young knight asked. "We survive," Windu replied. "We evacuate who we can. We coordinate with the clone resistance that's apparently forming. And we make Palpatine pay for every Jedi he's murdered." He ignited his purple lightsaber. "Council chambers now. We're recording a message. If the galaxy knows Palpatine is Sidious, they need to hear it from Jedi survivors, not just Yamato's intelligence reports." The message that went out 20 minutes later was broadcast on every frequency that separatist jamming hadn't blocked. Mace Windu, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and 11 other surviving masters confirming Yamato's evidence, declaring Palpatine a Sith Lord and traitor to the Republic, calling on all loyal forces to resist the coup. It was by any measure too little too late. The Jedi were broken. The clone army was fractured. And Palpatine,
My fellow citizens, we stand at the dawn of a new era. Our technology will lead us to the stars. We must unite against the coming storm.
The emergency
The
Senate
future is
session
ours to
convened
seize.
4 hours after Order 66 began, and the chamber that had once represented democracy spanning a galaxy now hosted something darker. Chancellor Palpatine stood at the podium, his face showing carefully calculated grief and righteous fury in equal measure. "Senators of the Republic," he began, his voice carrying across the chamber and to billions watching across the HoloNet. "Today we face the greatest betrayal in our history. The Jedi Order, peacekeepers we trusted, generals we followed, attempted a coup against the lawfully elected government. Senators erupted in shock and denial. But Palpatine continued with the smooth certainty of someone who'd been rehearsing this speech for 13 years. Evidence proves the Jedi have been working with separatist leadership to prolong the Clone Wars, to weaken the Republic, to position themselves to seize power when we were most vulnerable. He displayed fabricated evidence, masterful forgeries mixing truth with lies in ways impossible to immediately disprove. And they had help. The so-called Independent Stellar Accord, this mysterious vessel and its alien crew, have been their allies from the beginning. That's a lot. Bail Organa shouted from the Senate floor, supported by Mon Mothma and a dozen other senators who'd seen Yamato's real evidence. The Accord exposed your manipulation, proved your Darth Sidious. Propaganda. Palpatine replied with practiced calm, manufactured by Jedi desperately trying to justify their treason. But the Senate is wise. The Senate will see through Jedi deception. He paused, letting tension build, which is why I'm calling for an emergency vote. To grant me, temporarily, until this crisis passes, the authority to reorganize the Republic into an entity capable of ensuring our security. To transform our democracy into something that can survive threats both external and internal. You're declaring yourself Emperor, Padme Amidala said, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. Transforming the Republic into a dictatorship. This is exactly what Yamato warned us about. This is survival, Senator, Palpatine replied, and for just a moment his mask slipped, showing something cold and ancient beneath. The Senate can vote to protect itself, or it can cling to democratic principles while the Republic burns. Choose. The vote was called, and as Padme watched with horror, as Bail closed his eyes in defeat, as Mon Mothma's face hardened with determination to resist, the Senate chose survival over democracy. By a vote of 1,847 to 312, the Galactic Republic became the Galactic Empire, and Emperor Palpatine, no longer hiding behind the Chancellor's mask, issued his first decree. All Accord worlds are declared in rebellion against the Empire. All Jedi are traitors to be executed on sight, and all clone units that refuse Order 66 are to be terminated as defective products. He smiled then, a terrible expression that promised suffering. And as for Space Battleship Yamato, the vessel that dared interfere with my grand design, I'm authorizing Protocol Omega. Captain Kodai wanted to save the galaxy? Let him watch it burn. Across the HoloNet, the message transmitted to every Imperial installation, every Separatist facility that had secretly been under Palpatine's control all along, every asset he'd been holding in reserve for exactly this moment. Destroy the Accord. Eliminate the Jedi. Execute the clones who refuse. And bring me Yamato's crew in chains, or bring me their ashes. On Karadef, in Yamato's heavily damaged bridge, Captain Kodai watched the Senate sessions broadcast with the expression of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out before in their own universe. Democracy dying to thunderous applause. Tyrants rising from manufactured crises. Good people doing nothing because survival seemed more important than principles. We saved 94 Jedi, Commander Shima said quietly. 9,906 died. We fractured the clone army, but most are still following orders. We exposed Palpatine, but the Senate crowned him Emperor anyway. She met Kodai's eyes. Did we accomplish anything except painting targets on our backs? Kodai studied the tactical display, showing 18 Accord worlds scattered across the Outer Rim, each one now officially in rebellion against an empire that commanded millions of clone troopers, thousands of Star Destroyers, and a Sith Lord who'd been planning galactic domination since before Kodai's crew was born. We gave people a choice, he replied. 94 Jedi who would have died. 2,000 clone troopers who said no to programming. 300 senators who voted against dictatorship. 18 worlds choosing freedom over tyranny. He stood, moving to the viewport showing Karadef cities where refugees from a dozen worlds had built new lives under Accord protection. Palpatine's plan was perfect. Total Jedi annihilation. Seamless transition to Empire. No resistance. No opposition. No hope. He turned back to his crew, showing them the same determination that had kept them alive across impossible battles in their home universe. We made his plan imperfect, gave the galaxy 94 survivors who know the truth, 2,000 clones who proved programming doesn't define them, millions of people who watched democracy die, but know it didn't have to. Alarms interrupted as sensors detected new hyperspace signatures emerging throughout the system. Not hundreds of ships this time, thousands. Palpatine wasn't sending fleets to conquer the Accord. He was sending everything to annihilate them. Captain, Chief Engineer Tokugawa's voice carried over the comm with grim finality. Wave motion engine is critical. 2 shots remaining. After that, I know, Kodai interrupted. After that, we're trapped here forever. But we've been trapped since the moment we chose to fight. The question was never whether we could escape. It's whether we'd make that sacrifice mean something. He moved to his command chair, the weight of command settling across his shoulders as it had 1,000 times before. Battle stations. Contact every Accord world. Begin emergency evacuations. Coordinate with Jedi survivors and clone resistance forces. And someone find out where Admiral Yularen is. Because I think it's time the rebellion started organizing. Rebellion? Shima asked. What else do you call people who refuse to kneel to emperors? Kodai replied. As Yamato prepared for the battle that would define whether the Accord survived or became a footnote in galactic history, across the Empire, clone troopers made impossible choices. Jedi survivors coordinated desperate resistance. and senators who'd voted against dictatorship began quiet conversations about organized opposition. The Jedi Purge had failed to be total genocide. Order 66 had fractured instead of unified the clone army. And Palpatine's perfect plan was now vulnerable in ways he'd never anticipated. All because a ship from another universe had asked one simple question. What if we choose to fight? The Imperial
fleet is under
Armada that
attack. All
emerged
batteries
from
fire.
hyperspace around
Their shields are
Karadev
failing. We
48
must hold the
hours
line.
after Palpatine
Launch all
declared
fighters.
himself
Protect the
emperor
command ship.
Wasn't just
The Force is
overwhelming.
with us. We will
It was a
prevail.
statement of absolute power designed to crush hope before resistance could organize. 273 capital ships, Venator-class Star Destroyers that had fought for the Republic, now bearing Imperial insignias. Acclamator-class assault ships carrying legion upon legion of clone troopers. Arquitens-class light cruisers forming escort screens. And at the center of the formation, newly commissioned from secret shipyards that had been building it for years, the prototype Superstar Destroyer Executor. Not the 19-kilometer Leviathan that would terrorize the galaxy in later years, but an 8-kilometer proof of concept that dwarfed every vessel in the sector, bristling with enough firepower to reduce entire fleets to scrap metal. And aboard its bridge, Emperor Palpatine himself stood before floor-to-ceiling viewports overlooking the Accord's primary sanctuary world, his yellow Sith eyes gleaming with satisfaction as he surveyed the trap he'd spent weeks preparing. Captain Kodai, Palpatine's voice transmitted across all frequencies with the calm certainty of someone holding every tactical advantage. Your interference in galactic affairs has been educational. You've demonstrated that even the most carefully orchestrated plans can be disrupted by variables operating outside expected parameters. You exposed my identity, fractured the clone army, and saved Jedi who should have died. Remarkable achievements. He paused, letting that acknowledgement settle before delivering the killing blow. But you've also made a fundamental miscalculation about power. You believed that revealing truth would inspire resistance, that protecting refugees would create sanctuary, that one ship with an impressive weapon could change the galaxy's trajectory. His smile carried the weight of centuries of Sith manipulation. You were wrong, and now I'm going to teach you why. On Yamato's bridge, Captain Kodai listened with the tactical focus of someone recognizing when an enemy was about to reveal their trump card. What's your play, Palpatine? My play, Captain, began the moment your first diplomatic missions reached Accord worlds 6 months ago. Palpatine gestured, and holographic displays activated across every screen in the system. Not just Imperial vessels, but civilian networks, emergency broadcasts, even Yamato's own external monitors. The holos showed Accord worlds, all 18 of them, and on each world, hidden beneath diplomatic facilities, refugee centers, and civilian infrastructure, Sith devices, dogens per planet, pulsing with dark side energy that made every force sensitive in the system recoil in revulsion. You welcomed Republic envoys. Palpatine continued with satisfaction, accepted separatist refugees, allowed investigators and diplomats to move freely through your territories. And none of you noticed my agents planting interdiction generators keyed to a specific energy signature, your wave motion engine's dimensional distortion field. Commander Shima's hands flew across her tactical console, confirming what her instruments were already showing. Captain, those devices are generating a field that, her voice tightened with understanding, that prevents dimensional jumping. We can't use the wave motion engine to escape into another dimension. We're locked into local space, not just dimensional jumping. Chief Engineer Tokugawa added from engineering, studying readings that made his worst fears concrete. The field is interfering with hyperspace mechanics across the entire sector. Standard Republic hyperdrives are unaffected. The devices are tuned to allow Imperial vessels free movement. But our ships, Jedi transports, any vessel not using Imperial-approved NAV computers is trapped. He's turned 18 sanctuary worlds into prisons. Kodai absorbed that tactical reality with the calm that came from years of facing impossible situations. So we can't escape via dimensional jump. can't flee to hyperspace. And we're surrounded by a fleet large enough to reduce every Accord world to radioactive slag. He met Palpatine's gaze across the transmission. You want surrender. I want annihilation. Palpatine corrected with cold honesty that was somehow more terrifying than threats. You've cost me 2 years of careful planning. Saved Jedi who were supposed to die. Inspired clone resistance that undermines my military. Gave the galaxy proof that the Empire was built on orchestrated war. You didn't just interfere, Captain. You humiliated me. His voice dropped to something ancient and terrible. So, I'm not offering surrender terms. I'm offering you a choice. Watch as I systematically destroy every Accord world, starting with the ones holding the most refugees, where he paused for emphasis. Fire your wave motion gun at Executor. Use your last shots trying to kill me. And die knowing that while you struck at one target, my fleets burned 18 worlds and 23 million civilians who trusted you to protect them. The tactical situation materialized on Yamato's holographic displays with brutal clarity. Executor holding position above Karadef with 50 escort vessels. Enough firepower to engage Yamato, while the remaining 220 ships spread across the system to attack all 18 Accord worlds simultaneously. Each world defended by maybe 10 to 15 Accord vessels. Outgunned 12 to 1 at minimum. Civilian populations of 1 to 2 million per world. Evacuation would take weeks they didn't have. He's splitting our attention. Obi-Wan Kenobi said from where he stood with other Jedi survivors in Yamato's CIC. The Jedi Master had aged years in the past 2 days, having watched his order nearly destroyed and the Republic he'd served transformed into tyranny. If we engage the Executor, the other worlds burn. If we defend the other worlds, Palpatine destroys Karadef unopposed. We can't be everywhere, and he knows it. Yoda added, his ancient voice heavy with understanding of Sith tactics that predated anyone else in the room. Win, we cannot. Only choose which defeat we suffer. There's always a third option, Anakin Skywalker interjected, his presence on the bridge still strange. The chosen one who defected from Palpatine's design, now standing with the Jedi he'd been meant to destroy. We don't have a third option, Commander Shima interrupted with tactical honesty. 2 wave motion gun shots remaining. Even at maximum power, we can wound the Executor, but not destroy it. That ship is too large, too heavily shielded. And while we're fighting here, millions die across 18 worlds we promised to protect. Then we evacuate, Bail Organa suggested, his senator's mind calculating political realities even as military options collapsed. Abandon the Accord worlds. Scatter the population across neutral space. Survive to fight another day. Abandon them to what? Padme Amidala asked, her voice carrying the moral weight that had made her a voice for peace during the Clone Wars. Palpatine isn't bluffing. He'll bombard every world we leave behind. 23 million people who trusted us, who chose peace over war, who believed the Accord meant something. We'd be abandoning them to orbital bombardment. But staying means dying with them. Admiral Yularen pointed out with the pragmatism of someone who'd commanded fleets through impossible situations. My 17-star destroyers can help, but we're outnumbered 13 to 1. The moment we engage, this becomes a battle we cannot win. Kodai stood silently through the debate, his mind running calculations that all ended the same way: loss. Palpatine had engineered a scenario where every choice led to catastrophic casualties, where the Accord's principles became weapons used against them. We're trying to save everyone, guaranteed saving no one. It was brilliant strategy, perfect tactical manipulation, the kind of trap that couldn't be escaped through firepower or clever maneuvering, which meant the only way out was to change the nature of the trap itself.
Hold on for a moment. This is bigger than most people realize. Up till now, this looked like 3 factions colliding: Republic, Separatists, and Yamato. But that's not what this really is. What we're seeing now is the mask slipping. The war was never only about ideology. It was engineered, controlled, directed. And Yamato's greatest threat isn't the fleet hunting it. It's the truth it's dragging into the light. And once truth becomes visible, empires start panicking. Let's continue.
Calm, Kodai ordered quietly. Open a channel. Not to Palpatine, to every clone battalion in the Imperial fleet, and to every Star Destroyer captain. I want every Imperial service member to hear what I'm about to say. Captain, if you're thinking of appealing to their conscience, Yularen began. I'm thinking of offering them a choice, Kodai interrupted. The same choice we've been offering since we arrived in this galaxy. Engineering. Prepare wave motion gun for sequential firing. 2 shots. First at 90% power. Second at 100%. Target. Sith interdiction devices, not the Imperial fleet. Sir, Tokugawa's confusion was evident. The devices are planetary-based, shielded, and distributed across 18 worlds. Even maximum power wave motion gun discharge couldn't destroy them all. And using both remaining shots means we'll be stranded here permanently, even if we somehow survive the next 10 minutes. I know, Kodai replied, but we're not firing to destroy the devices. We're firing to give people a choice about whether to be part of this massacre. He moved to the communication console, and when he spoke, his voice transmitted across every Imperial vessel, every clone trooper's helmet comm, every Star Destroyer's bridge speakers, hundreds of thousands of beings who'd been ordered to participate in the annihilation of civilian populations. This is Captain Susumu Kodai of Space Battleship Yamato. You've been ordered to destroy 18 worlds, to kill 23 million civilians who've done nothing except refuse to participate in Emperor Palpatine's war. You're probably telling yourselves this is duty, following orders, military necessity. He paused, letting that settle. 6 months ago, most of you were Republic soldiers fighting for democracy. Today, you're Imperial troops, serving a Sith Lord who orchestrated the war that killed millions of your brothers. You've been told the Jedi were traitors, but you watched them die without trial. You've been told the Accord is in rebellion, but you know we only protected refugees your Republic couldn't spare resources to save. Across the Imperial fleet, clone troopers who'd been raised in Kaminoan growth chambers and taught that orders defined existence listened with growing uncertainty. Star Destroyer captains who'd commanded Republic vessels and watched democracy die in Senate chambers felt old doubts resurface. Emperor Palpatine says you have to follow orders, Kodai continued. That your soldiers, tools, weapons pointed at targets by someone who knows better than you what needs to be done. And maybe he's right. Maybe you're just tools, just weapons, just biological machines programmed to kill whoever you're told to kill. He let silence stretch for 3 seconds. Or maybe you're people who can choose whether participating in genocide is something you're willing to do. People who can ask whether killing millions of civilians, including clone deserters who found freedom on Accord worlds, is worth your loyalty to a Sith Lord. People who can look at 23 million beings who trusted us to protect them and decide, no, I won't be part of this. This is treason. An Imperial officer's voice cut across the channel. All units disregard hostile propaganda, maintain attack formations, and this is a choice, Kodai interrupted. And I'm about to prove that choices matter more than orders. Engineering, fire wave motion gun. Sequential discharge. Target every Sith interdiction device we can hit. The Yamato's
enemy
bow
fleet
section,
ahead, evasive
iris
maneuvers,
open
shields
for the
holding,
penultimate
returning
time.
fire. They're
Energy
targeting the
gathered
engines.
with
Hard to
familiar
port.
intensity.
Now.
Tachyon
Direct hit.
particles
One down.
compressed
Stay
beyond
sharp. More
normal
incoming.
physics. Dimensional forces channeled through technology that was minutes away from catastrophic failure. The wave motion gun fired at 90% power. The beam lanced across the system, threading between Imperial vessels with precision that made their tactical officers flinch, striking Sith devices on 6 Accord worlds simultaneously. The devices exploded in cascades of dark side energy, their interdiction fields collapsing. Second shot, Kodai ordered. Maximum power. All remaining devices. Captain, the wave motion engine is at critical failure threshold. This shot will. I know. Fire. The wave motion gun discharged at 100% capacity for the last time. The beam split into multiple targeting vectors, a feat of dimensional manipulation that shouldn't have been possible, striking Sith devices across the remaining 12 Accord worlds. Energy feedback screamed through Yamato's systems. The wave motion engine's dimensional matrix collapsed completely, catastrophic failure rippling through every system connected to the device that had saved Earth, crossed universes, and protected thousands. And in the sudden absence of Sith interference, hyperspace became accessible again. Interdiction fields down. Shima reported with barely controlled relief. All vessels can jump to hyperspace. Civilian transports, a core defense fleet, Jedi survivors, they can evacuate. Then issue the order, Kodai commanded. Orako was immédiate évacuation. Every ship that can carry passengers jumps to pre-designated fallback coordinates. We're abandoning the Accord, but we're saving the people. And us, Captain? Tokugawa asked quietly. Wave motion engine is completely offline. We can't fire the main weapon. Can't perform dimensional jumps. Our conventional engines are functional, but we're trapped in normal space while the Imperial fleet makes a choice, Kodai finished, watching as evacuation ships began launching from 18 worlds simultaneously. We gave them a way out of Palpatine's trap. We proved choices matter more than programming or orders. Now we see if they choose genocide or conscience. Aboard the Executor, Emperor Palpatine watched Yamato sacrifice its only remaining path home and felt something he rarely experienced. Genuine surprise mixed with fury. They destroyed the interdiction network. An Imperial officer reported unnecessarily. Civilian evacuation is proceeding across all 18 worlds. At current rates, 73% of the Accord population will escape before we can destroy their transports. Then destroy the transports, Palpatine snarled. All ships, weapons free. Fire on any vessel attempting to flee. Turn this sector into a graveyard. For 3 seconds, the Imperial fleet maintained formation, weapons locked, waiting for someone to take the first shot at unarmed civilian transports packed with refugees. Then, on the bridge of the Star Destroyer Resolute, Captain Rex, recently promoted after his defection with Anakin saved the Jedi Temple, made a decision that CT-2187 never would have been capable of making. Helm, break formation. Defensive position around the evacuation ships. Guns, if any Imperial vessel fires on civilians, you are authorized to return fire. Sir, that's mutiny, his tactical officer said. That's a choice, Rex corrected. Pass it on to the fleet. Any clone who won't participate in killing civilians has 30 seconds to make it known. The Imperial fleet fractured. Not completely, not even majority, but 17 Star Destroyers broke formation, their clone crews choosing refugees over orders. 42 Arquitens-class cruisers followed. 87 smaller vessels declared for the evacuation rather than the massacre. 146 Imperial ships remained loyal to Palpatine. Still overwhelming force. Still enough to destroy Yamato and devastate the evacuation fleet. But now they'd have to fight through their former brothers to do it. This is your doing, Palpatine transmitted directly to Yamato, his voice carrying rage that promised suffering. You've poisoned my clone army with this choice philosophy, turned soldiers into rebels, destroyed years of conditioning with propaganda about freedom. We didn't destroy anything, Kodai replied calmly. We just gave them permission to be what they already were, people. And people have a really annoying habit of refusing to commit genocide when you give them 30 seconds to think about it. Then I'll teach you what happens when people defy a Sith Lord, Palpatine said. The Executor opened fire with enough concentrated turbolaser power to vaporize capital ships. Not at the evacuation vessels, not at the rebel clone forces. At Karadef itself, the orbital bombardment began with surgical precision targeting population centers, infrastructure, and anything that suggested civilization. Continents burned, oceans boiled, 12 million civilians who'd chosen to stay, who were too old, too stubborn, or too committed to their homes to evacuate, died in the first 17 minutes. In Yamato, conventional weapons now woefully inadequate against an 8-kilometer dreadnought could only watch as Palpatine demonstrated the cost of defying Sith Lords. "We need to retreat," Admiral Yularen said, his voice hollow with horror at watching genocide occur. Regroup with the evacuation fleet. We can't stop this. No, Kodai replied, studying the tactical display with the expression of someone recognizing one final option. But we can make him pay for it. Helm, set collision course with Executor. All hands abandon ship. Use escape pods, transfer to Rex's fleet, get off Yamato in the next 90 seconds. Captain, Shima stared at him with dawning horror. We can't fire the wave motion gun. Can't outrun an 8-kilometer dreadnought. Can't win this battle conventionally. Kodai's voice carried absolute certainty. But we can ram that ship with everything Yamato has left. Our hull is reinforced for dimensional stress. Our reactor core carries enough power to crack a Star Destroyer in half. We hit the Executor at full burn, and even if it doesn't destroy the ship, it'll cripple it long enough for the evacuation to complete. That's suicide, Obi-Wan said quietly. That's choice, Kodai replied. Get my crew off this ship. That's an order. For the next 83 seconds, Yamato's crew evacuated with practiced efficiency born from years of facing impossible odds. Escape pods launched toward Rex's fleet. Yoda guided Jedi survivors to waiting transports. Anakin hesitated at the bridge entrance, torn between Jedi duty and recognition that Kodai was doing exactly what the Order had always claimed to do, sacrificing everything for others. Captain, Anakin said, this is what needs to be done, Kodai interrupted. Go. Protect the evacuation. Make sure we didn't strand ourselves in this universe for nothing. Anakin left, and 60 seconds later, only 3 people remained on Yamato's bridge. Captain Susumu Kodai, Commander Shima, who'd refused to evacuate, and Chief Engineer Tokugawa, who'd stayed at his post until the last possible second. You're both idiots, Kodai said without heat. We came from Earth together, Shima replied. We'll die in an alien galaxy together. Crew stays with the captain, Tokugawa added simply. That's how Yamato works. Kodai allowed himself one moment of gratitude for having served with these people before refocusing on the task at hand. Engineering, all power to engines. Helm, maximum burn directly at Executor's bridge section. Space Battleship Yamato, scarred from battles across 2 universes, missing its primary weapon, carrying only 3 crew members in a vessel designed for over 100, accelerated toward the symbol of Imperial might with the grim certainty of people who decided that if they couldn't save everyone, they'd at least make the cost visible. On the Executor's bridge, Palpatine watched the impossible sight of a capital ship on suicide course and felt something he rarely acknowledged: respect for an enemy who refused to surrender even when logic said they'd lost. Evasive action, he ordered. Sir, a vessel that size cannot maneuver fast enough to. I said evasive action. The Executor attempted to turn, its massive bulk responding sluggishly, and Yamato's crew realized with grim satisfaction that they'd actually forced Palpatine to flee or die. But then, 30 seconds before impact, Yamato's engines died. Not sabotage, not weapon damage. Just catastrophic mechanical failure from systems pushed far beyond design tolerances. The inevitable end of technology operating in a universe whose physics rejected it. The ship went dark, momentum carrying it forward, but no longer able to adjust course or speed. And Palpatine, watching Yamato become a drifting derelict, smiled with Sith satisfaction. Tractor beams. Bring that ship into our hangar. I want its crew alive. His smile widened. I'm going to teach the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire. The tractor beams locked onto Yamato's lifeless hull with invisible force, pulling the vessel that had crossed dimensions and defied a Sith Lord into the Executor's massive hangar bay like a trophy being mounted for display. Captain Kodai watched through the viewports as a ship, Earth's last hope against extinction, humanity's greatest achievement, the vessel that had saved billions, was dragged into captivity with the same helpless frustration he'd felt watching Gamala's planet bombs fall on Earth before Yamato's maiden voyage. Options? He asked, though the tactical situation was beyond salvage. We have sidearms with maybe 20 shots between us, Commander Shima replied, checking her weapon with the automatic efficiency of someone who'd fired it in desperate situations before. Conventional engines are offline. Wave motion gun is permanently destroyed. Life support will last maybe 6 hours. And we're about to be boarded by however many stormtroopers Palpatine wants to throw at 3 people with pistols. So we're going to die. Chief Engineer Tokugawa summarized with the blunt pragmatism that had made him invaluable through impossible crises. Question is whether we die shooting or die cooperating. Kodai studied the Executor's hangar bay through the viewports. Hundreds of stormtroopers in formation, weapon emplacements positioned to turn Yamato into scrap metal if they resisted. And at the center of it all, Emperor Palpatine himself waiting with the patient satisfaction of someone who'd already won and was simply enjoying the process of claiming victory. We die making him work for it, Kodai decided. But not yet. Shima, establish encrypted transmission to Rex's fleet. Let them know Yamato's been captured, but the evacuation is proceeding. Tokugawa, activate the ship's self-destruct sequence with 30-minute delay and voice authorization lockout. Palpatine wants us alive to interrogate, which means he can't just blow through the hull to get us. Captain, if we're captured, he'll torture the abort codes out of us, Tokugawa warned. Then we make sure we're not captured, Kodai replied with the calm certainty that had guided them through battles against Gamala's Comet Empire and threats that should have destroyed them 100 times over. We have 30 minutes to either escape or ensure Yamato doesn't give the Empire any technological advantages. Sidearms, emergency oxygen, and whatever portable equipment we can carry. We're abandoning ship, again, just in a more direct fashion. The hangar bay's magnetic containment field shimmered as Yamato settled onto the deck with the groaning protest of stressed metal. Stormtroopers advanced in parade formation, their white armor gleaming under harsh lights. Blastech 11 blaster rifles trained on every access point. And Emperor Palpatine, flanked by royal guards in crimson armor, approached with the measured pace of someone who had infinite time and absolute power. Captain Kodai, Palpatine's voice amplified across the hangar through the Force itself, making every surface vibrate with Sith energy. You've led me on quite a chase. Disrupted my carefully orchestrated plans. Saved Jedi who were meant to die. Inspired clone resistance that cost me military efficiency. And, most impressively, sacrificed your only way home to protect strangers in a galaxy that isn't even yours. He stopped before Yamato's hull, yellow eyes studying the scarred vessel with something between respect and contempt. I'm genuinely curious. Why? Your universe has its own problems. Earth needed you. Your families waited for your return. What could possibly motivate someone to throw away everything for people you'd known for months? Inside the bridge, Kodai opened a channel so Palpatine could hear his response. Because some choices aren't about what we gain. They're about who we refuse to become. We could have stayed silent about your manipulation. Could have ignored Order 66. Could have let the Jedi die and the Empire rise unopposed. But that would have made us complicit in genocide. And I've seen what happens when good people do nothing while tyrants orchestrate wars. It's how my universe almost lost Earth to extinction. Noble, Palpatine replied with mocking appreciation. Suicidal but noble. Unfortunately for you, nobility without power is just theater. And your power, he gestured at Yamato's darkened hull, has failed. Your wave motion gun is destroyed. Your dimensional drive is offline. Your crew has abandoned you. You're 3 people with sidearms facing the full might of the Galactic Empire. Then I suppose you've won, Kodai said calmly. Which means you don't need us alive. You don't need Yamato intact. And you certainly don't need to waste Imperial resources on interrogation when you could just destroy this vessel and move on to more important matters. Palpatine's expression shifted to something predatory. But I want you alive, Captain. I want the galaxy to watch as the people who defied the Empire are paraded through Coruscant chains. I want every clone trooper who questions their orders to see what happens to rebels. I want every Jedi survivor hiding in the Outer Rim to understand that resistance is futile. Then come get us, Kodai replied. Because we're not surrendering. And I've activated Yamato's self-destruct sequence with 28 minutes remaining. You could try to board us and risk your stormtroopers in close-quarters combat, where our 3 sidearms might hold out for 5 minutes. You could try to breach the hull and risk detonating the reactor core prematurely, or you can let us die on our terms instead of yours. For 3 seconds, Palpatine stood silently, his Sith senses reaching through the Force to feel whether Kodai was bluffing. He wasn't. Interesting, Palpatine said finally. You're genuinely prepared to die rather than give me the satisfaction of your capture. Most beings talk about principles until pain becomes involved. But recognition entered his voice. You've already survived impossible battles, already faced extinction, already made choices where death was preferable to compromise. He smiled then, and the expression promised suffering, which is why I'm not giving you a clean death. Stormtroopers, seal the hangar bay. Cut power to the vessel. Let them sit in the dark with their self-destruct counting down. And prepare assault teams. We're boarding that ship in exactly 27 minutes. Captain Kodai wants to die on his terms? I'll teach him that the Empire decides when people die, not 3 strangers with delusions of heroism. The hangar bay sealed with the grinding finality of blast doors meant to contain capital ship explosions. Emergency lighting activated, casting Yamato in harsh red illumination that made the vessel look like it was already burning. And inside the bridge, 3 crew members from Earth, stranded in an alien galaxy, trapped aboard a dying ship, surrounded by an empire that wanted them broken before they were allowed to die, made the only choice that had ever mattered to them. They prepared to fight. 23 minutes before Yamato's self-destruct would detonate, the first assault team breached the hull. Not through the main airlock. Kodai had sealed and booby-trapped those with everything they could improvise in the time available. Instead, Imperial engineers cut through the observation deck's reinforced windows using plasma torches, creating an entry point that bypassed Yamato's internal defenses. 12 stormtroopers flooded through the breach with professional efficiency, their armor's HUD systems mapping the ship's interior, their training preparing them for resistance from desperate defenders. What they weren't prepared for was the ship itself fighting back. Tokugawa had spent 20 minutes rewiring Yamato's emergency systems to respond to movement. Pressure sensors triggering bulkhead doors, motion detectors activating fire suppression systems, and damaged power conduits channeling random electrical discharges through deck plating. The first stormtrooper through the breach triggered a bulkhead door that slammed shut with enough force to sever his arm. The second stepped on compromised deck plating and received 2,000 volts through his armor's conductive elements. The third made it 5 meters before fire suppression foam flooded the corridor, blinding his HUD sensors and forcing his squad to advance through chemical fog that their equipment couldn't penetrate. Shima, positioned 3 decks above with her sidearm and the high ground, picked off targets with precision born from years of combat experience. 1 shot per stormtrooper. Aimed for joints where armor was thinnest. Retreated before they could triangulate her position. Kodai, defending engineering where Tokugawa worked to extend the self-destruct timer, buying time for the evacuation fleet to get beyond Palpatine's reach, fought with the calculated efficiency of someone who'd commanded desperate battles in impossible situations. He wasn't trying to win, just making the Empire pay for every meter of ship they claimed. By the time the second assault team breached through the port hangar bay, Yamato had become a maze of death traps, improvised ambushes, and 3 defenders who refused to make capture easy. Imperial casualties: 17 stormtroopers dead, 24 wounded. Yamato casualties: Kodai took a glancing blaster shot to the shoulder. Shima exhausted her ammunition. Tokugawa jury-rigged the self-destruct to require manual deactivation from 3 separate locations simultaneously. Impossible if the defenders were dead. And with 14 minutes remaining before detonation, Emperor Palpatine made a decision that demonstrated why Sith Lords were more dangerous than any military force. He stopped sending stormtroopers and entered Yamato himself. The Force preceded him like a wave of darkness, an oppressive weight that made breathing difficult and thoughts sluggish. Kodai felt it even without Force sensitivity, The same existential dread he'd experienced facing weapons that could exterminate humanity, the recognition that something beyond conventional threat was approaching. Palpatine walked through Yamato's corridors with unhurried certainty, his Force senses guiding him past traps, around ambushes, through sealed bulkheads that opened at a gesture as Sith lightning carved through mechanisms like they were tissue paper. Captain Kodai, his voice echoed through the ship's damaged comm system, amplified by the Force to reach every compartment. I've spent 70 years mastering power that you cannot comprehend. I've orchestrated the fall of the Jedi Order, transformed a democracy into an empire, commanded the deaths of billions in service to the dark side's design. He paused, his presence drawing closer to engineering where Kodai waited with exhausted readiness. And you, 3 people from a dead ship, think you can resist me through improvised traps and pistols with 7 shots remaining between you? Genuine curiosity entered his voice. What makes you believe you have any chance of survival? We don't, Kodai replied honestly, checking the chronometer showing 11 minutes until detonation. But we're not trying to survive. We're trying to make sure you understand that some people can't be intimidated into surrender. That power doesn't make you right. And that every person you've killed, every clone you've programmed, every Jedi you've murdered, they mattered. They weren't just obstacles to your grand design. They were people who deserved better than being tools in a Sith Lord scheme. Touching philosophy, Palpatine said, his voice now close enough to suggest he was just outside engineering. Let me respond with a demonstration of practical reality. The bulkhead door exploded inward with Sith lightning, metal vaporizing from dark side, energy channeled with surgical precision. Palpatine stepped through the breach, flanked by royal guards whose Force pikes hummed with lethal intent, and faced 3 exhausted defenders with empty weapons, standing between him and the self-destruct controls. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Kodai spoke with the calm certainty that had defined his command through impossible battles. 10 minutes until detonation. You can kill us now and watch Yamato explode with technological secrets you'll never recover. You could try to disable the self-destruct and risk us dying before revealing the abort codes. Or, he met Palpatine's yellow eyes without flinching. You can let us evacuate in an escape pod and claim you captured the ship intact. Why would I negotiate with dead men? Palpatine asked. Because we both know you want something more than our deaths, Kodai replied. You want the galaxy to see us broken, paraded, defeated. Dead martyrs become symbols. Captured prisoners become cautionary tales. And right now, you're facing a choice between symbol and ashes. Palpatine studied Kodai with Force-enhanced perception that penetrated surface thoughts and motivations, seeing exactly what he'd expected. Genuine willingness to die rather than surrender, crew loyalty that transcended self-preservation, and absolute certainty that their choices had mattered regardless of outcome. It was, he recognized, the most dangerous kind of enemy. Not powerful, not militarily significant, just completely immune to the fear that made most beings controllable. 9 minutes, Tokugawa said quietly. Palpatine made his decision. You have 60 seconds to deactivate, self-destruct, and evacuate. Then I'm killing all 3 of you and letting the ship explode. Choose. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Tokugawa's hands flew across the engineering console, entering abort codes that would give them maybe 4 minutes before systems could be reactivated. Shima accessed the escape pod protocols, prepping the last functional pod for emergency launch. Kodai stood between his crew and Palpatine, knowing that if the Sith Lord changed his mind, they'd all die before reaching the pod. Why did you interfere? Palpatine asked as they worked. Truth now, Captain. Not philosophy. Not principles. Why did 3 strangers from another universe sacrifice everything for a galaxy that isn't yours? Kodai met his eyes and answered with complete honesty. Because someone had to. Because power without conscience destroys everything it touches. Because the Accord, the Jedi, the clones who chose freedom, they deserve someone willing to fight for them, even when victory was impossible. He paused at the escape pod entrance. And because in my universe, We learned what happens when good people do nothing while tyrants orchestrate wars. Earth almost died because we didn't act fast enough. We swore that would never happen again, that we'd fight tyranny wherever we found it, even if it cost us everything. Noble, Palpatine replied. Foolish, but noble. He gestured, and royal guards stepped back from the escape pod. Go, Captain. Escape with your crew. Return to the Accord refugees you saved. And know that I'll be hunting you until the day I crush every last remnant of resistance you inspired. We'll be waiting, Kodai said. The escape pod launched, carrying 3 crew members away from the ship that had been their home, their weapon, and their symbol toward a fleet of evacuation vessels that had successfully escaped the Karadef system with 8.4 million refugees who should have died. Aboard the Executor, Palpatine watched the escape pod vanish toward the rebel clone fleet and felt something rare. Satisfaction mixed with anticipation. Yamato was captured intact, its technology ready for study. The Accord was scattered, but not destroyed. The Empire controlled the galaxy, but faced organized resistance for the first time. It wasn't the clean victory he'd planned, but it was, he recognized, the foundation for a proper war. Not the orchestrated theater of the Clone Wars, but genuine conflict between Empire and Rebellion. And somewhere in the dark side's whispers, he sensed that this new war would be far more interesting than the one he'd carefully scripted. 6 months after Yamato's capture, the galaxy had transformed in ways even Palpatine's perfect planning couldn't have predicted. The Galactic Empire controlled most core and mid-rim worlds, but its authority fractured at the edges. Outer Rim sectors declared independence. Former separatist territories refused imperial authority. And across the galaxy, pockets of resistance organized around symbols that had survived Order 66. The Rebel Alliance formed in secret bases scattered across neutral space, its leadership including Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and Padme Amidala, who'd barely escaped Coruscant before Palpatine could consolidate power. They coordinated supplies, intelligence, and military operations against an empire that commanded millions but couldn't be everywhere. The Jedi Remnant, 47 survivors operating from hidden temples, trained a new generation of Force sensitives rescued from Imperial purges. Obi-Wan Kenobi coordinated their efforts. Yoda provided ancient wisdom. Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one who defected from Palpatine's design, taught students that choice mattered more than destiny. The Clone Republic emerged from 300 battalions that had refused Order 66, establishing territories governed by clones for clones. They weren't rebels or Imperial loyalists, just soldiers trying to define existence beyond programming. CT-2187 Rex served as their primary coordinator, building alliances with rebel cells and Accord refugees. And the Accord Coalition, 18 worlds scattered across space, 8.4 million refugees who'd chosen peace over war, defended by 15 military vessels and the legend of a ship that had crossed dimensions to protect strangers, survived on the galaxy's edges as proof that alternatives to Empire existed. At the center of it all, in a secret base on a moon whose name only a handful knew, Captain Susumu Kodai stood in a command center built from salvaged Imperial equipment and Accord ingenuity, watching holographic displays showing the evolving war. His shoulder still ached from the blaster wound that hadn't healed quite right. His ship was gone, captured and dissected for technology that would never function properly in this universe's physics. His crew of 114 had been reduced to 57 survivors after Karadef's bombardment, and his only path home had been sacrificed to save strangers in a war he'd never chosen. Commander Shima approached with datapads showing the latest intelligence reports. Imperial forces are consolidating around the core worlds. Rebel cells are harassing supply lines in the mid-rim. The Jedi Remnant reports 6 new Force-sensitive children rescued from Imperial custody. And Admiral Yularen is requesting coordination for a strike on Imperial shipyards at Quat. Approved, Kodai replied. Coordinate with Rex's clone forces. They'll provide ground support while Yularen handles orbital assault. Make sure Obi-Wan knows We might need Jedi infiltration teams to disable shield generators. Captain, Sheamus said quietly, we're planning military operations in a galactic war, coordinating rebel cells and Jedi survivors and clone resistance forces. This isn't what Yamato was designed for. This isn't what she paused, struggling with the magnitude of what they become. This isn't Earth. This isn't our fight. This isn't even our universe. I know, Kodai replied, still watching the displays. We came from Earth seeking salvation for our world. Found ourselves in a galaxy where a Sith Lord orchestrated wars as entertainment. We exposed him, saved some people, made choices that cost us everything. He turned to face her, and his expression carried the weight of command that had kept them alive through battles that should have killed them all. But somewhere in that process, we became part of this galaxy's story. The Jedi survived because we warned them. The clones chose freedom because we offered it. The Rebel Alliance exists because we proved resistance was possible. He gestured at the displays, showing scattered resistance forces across the galaxy. This might not be Earth, but these people, they're fighting the same battle we fought against Gamorreans. Survival against extinction. Hope against tyranny. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today, even when today says you should surrender. So we stay, Sheamus said. Not a question, a confirmation. We stay, Kodai agreed. Not because we have a choice, our way home is gone, but because these people deserve what we gave Earth, someone willing to fight for them when victory seems impossible. Alarms interrupted as new hyperspace signatures appeared on long-range sensors. Not Imperial, not Rebel. Unknown vessel composition approaching their hidden base with transponder codes requesting permission to dock. Identify, Kodai ordered. The sensor operator's voice carried surprise. Sir, it's Yamato, or what's left of it. Signature matches our vessel's energy profile despite catastrophic modifications. Transmitting friendly codes and requesting Captain Kodai personally. On the view screen, the vessel appeared. Yamato's hull, scarred and rebuilt with Imperial technology grafted onto Earth engineering. Conventional weapons where the wave motion gun had been. Republic-style engines replacing the dimensional drive. A hybrid monstrosity that shouldn't function, but somehow did. And standing on what remained of the bridge, visible through the external cameras, a Jedi Knight named Ezra Bridger who'd led the raid that recaptured Yamato from Imperial custody, alongside clone troopers from Rex's battalion who'd provided ground support, and Chief Engineer Tokugawa, who'd spent 6 months in Imperial captivity before being rescued 3 weeks ago. Captain Kodai, Ezra's transmission crackled with exhaustion and triumph. We brought your ship home. She's not what she was. No wave motion gun, no dimensional drive, barely functional by your standards, but she flies. And she's yours again if you want her. Kodai stared at the reconstructed vessel that had carried them across dimensions, protected millions, and sacrificed everything to stop a Sith Lord. It wasn't the ship that had left Earth. Wasn't the weapon that had saved humanity. But it was still Yamato. Prep docking procedures, he ordered, and someone contact Admiral Yularen. Tell him the quad operation is approved, and we'll be providing fire support. Sir, Shima asked carefully, are you certain? Yamato barely functions. We have 57 crew for a ship that requires over 100. And without the wave motion gun, we're still Yamato, Kodai interrupted. Still the ship that crossed dimensions to fight tyranny. Still the crew that refused to surrender when surrender was logical. And still people who believe that sometimes the impossible just takes a little longer. He moved toward the hangar bay where his reconstructed ship was docking, carrying scars from battles across 2 universes and modifications that turned it into something neither Earth nor the Empire had intended. We came from Earth to save humanity, he said to the crew gathering to witness Yamato's return. We stayed in this galaxy to save strangers. We lost our way home, lost our primary weapon, lost over half our crew. But we gained something Earth's salvation never taught us. That heroism isn't about power or victory or returning home triumphant. He paused at the airlock, watching his ship settle into dock like a warrior returning from battles that should have killed them. It's about choosing who to protect with whatever you have left. And in a galaxy where an empire says resistance is futile, where Sith lords orchestrate wars as entertainment, where millions die because nobody with power cared enough to intervene, his voice carried the absolute certainty that had guided them through impossible battles. We're proof that someone always cares, that interference matters, that asking questions matters, and that some ships, some crews, some captains refuse to accept that evil wins simply because it plans better. As Yamato's crew prepared to board their rebuilt vessel for operations against the Galactic Empire, across the galaxy resistance forces coordinated attacks. Jedi survivors trained new students, clone troopers chose freedom over programming, and millions of beings who'd watched democracy die in Senate chambers decided that silence was complicity and resistance was duty. The Clone Wars had been Palpatine's masterpiece, orchestrated chaos serving Sith design. The Galactic Civil War was something far more dangerous, genuine rebellion against tyranny, inspired by a ship from another universe that had proven choices mattered more than power. Yamato would never fire the wave motion gun again, would never cross dimensions home, would never see Earth's skies. But in a galaxy far, far away, they become something more important than Earth's salvation. They become proof that even in the darkest timeline, even against impossible odds, even when victory seemed impossible, someone would always choose to fight. And that choice, more than any weapon, could change the galaxy. Space Battleship Yamato crossed dimensions by accident and changed the Star Wars galaxy forever. They exposed Palpatine's conspiracy, interrupted Order 66, saved 94 Jedi from genocide, inspired clone resistance across 300 battalions, and sacrificed their wave motion gun, their dimensional drive, their only path home, to protect 8.4 million refugees who'd chosen peace. The cost was catastrophic: 57 crew dead from Cara Defa's bombardment, their primary weapon destroyed, Earth unreachable forever. But what they gained was immeasurable. They prevented total Jedi extermination, fractured the Empire's rise, given the galaxy organized resistance 2 years before it should have existed, and proven that power could choose sacrifice over conquest. The Galactic Civil War was messier than Palpatine's carefully orchestrated Clone Wars. More factions, more chaos, more unpredictability. But it was also more hopeful, because the galaxy had learned that strangers from another universe would sacrifice everything protecting freedom for people they'd just met. Yamato would never fire the wave motion gun again, would never cross dimensions home, would never return to Earth. But they become something more important than a weapon or a ship or even heroes. They become proof that in any universe, in any timeline, against any tyranny, someone would always choose to stand between evil and the innocent. Someone would always refuse to surrender. Someone would always fight. And sometimes that was enough to change everything. This is Star Wars Creeds. Feel free to suggest crossover titles in the comments below.
Man, this stopped being a crossover a long time ago. What started as one impossible ship entering the galaxy is now reshaping everything. The Jedi, the clones, the Republic, even the very idea of freedom. And the scary part? We still haven't seen what happens when Anakin Skywalker is finally forced to choose which future he believes in. So I need your honest answer. If Yamato offered the galaxy peace, would the galaxy even know how to accept it? Drop your response in the comments below.
Stand united. We are with you, Master. Then ignite your blades. Let the Force flow. The Force is with us. Together, we prevail.